Hello guys, how are you all? Welcome back to my channel. So, today we are gonna see, what if Goku was raised by Odin, the Allfather? Subscribe if you enjoy the video. And also check the description. So let's begin the story. The stars wheeled overhead in patterns that had remained unchanged since the dawn of creation, their cold light illuminating the throne room of Asgard where Odin Borson sat in contemplation. The Allfather's single eye gazed into distances that mortal minds could not comprehend, seeing through veils of time and space that separated the 9 realms. Tonight, something had changed in the cosmic tapestry he had monitored for millennia. A disturbance. It was subtle at first, a ripple in the fabric of reality that spoke of something foreign, something that did not belong to any of the realms under his protection. Odin rose from his throne, the great spear Gungnir materializing in his hand with a thought. The weapon hummed with ancient power, its runes glowing faintly in the dimness of the hall. "My king?" Heimdall's voice echoed in his mind, the all-seeing guardian's consciousness touching his own across the distance that separated the throne room from the Bifrost Observatory. "I sense your concern. There is indeed something unusual. A vessel has breached the barriers between realms, landing on Midgard. Its design is unlike anything in our records." Odin strode through the palace corridors, his crimson cloak billowing behind him. Guards snapped to attention as he passed, but he paid them no mind. His thoughts were consumed by the mystery Heimdall had confirmed. In his long life, he had seen countless wonders and terrors, but this felt different. The energy signature was powerful, primal, and yet innocent somehow. "Show me," Odin commanded as he reached the Bifrost chamber, where Heimdall stood at his eternal post, his golden eyes fixed on the cosmos beyond. The gatekeeper turned, and for the first time in centuries, Odin saw uncertainty in that ancient gaze. "The vessel came from beyond the 9 realms, my lord, from a star system so distant that even my sight struggles to pierce its depths. But what troubles me more is what lies within." With a gesture, Heimdall activated the Bifrost, but instead of opening a pathway, he used its power to project an image. There, in a remote mountainous region of Midgard, lay a strange spherical pod. Its surface was scorched from atmospheric entry, strange symbols etched into metallic plating that gleamed dully in the moonlight. But it was what Heimdall revealed next that captured Odin's full attention. Inside the pod lay a child, an infant, no more than a few years old by the look of him, with wild black hair that stood in all directions. The child was crying, his small fists beating against the interior of his prison. But around him, Odin could see it, a power that pulsed with each wail, invisible to mortal eyes but clear as day to the Allfather's mystical perception. Energy that spoke of battles yet to come, of potential that defied easy categorization. "A child," Odin murmured, his weathered face softening. "Alone and afraid, cast into the void between stars. His power readings are extraordinary, my lord," Heimdall said quietly. "Even now, untrained and ignorant of his own nature, he possesses strength that would shame many of our younger warriors. And there is something else, a tail. He is not human, though he resembles one of Midgard's children." Odin studied the image carefully. The child did indeed possess a tail, brown and furry, wrapped around his small waist. Whatever race he belonged to, they were unknown to Asgard's vast repositories of knowledge. The pod itself told a story. This was no accident. Someone had placed this child inside, had sent him across the cosmos for a purpose. Was it salvation they sought, or were they disposing of a weapon too dangerous to control? The Allfather had faced such questions before. He thought of Loki, found as an infant in the aftermath of war, frost giant blood running through his veins despite his small size. Odin had taken that child and raised him as his own, and whatever complications had arisen, he had never regretted giving the boy a home and a family. "Prepare the Bifrost," Odin said suddenly, his decision made. "I will retrieve the child myself." Heimdall's eyes widened fractionally, the closest thing to surprise he ever showed. "My lord, we know nothing of his people or his purpose. This could be a trap?" Odin finished, a slight smile touching his lips. "Perhaps. But I see no deception in that child's tears, Heimdall. Only fear and loneliness. Whatever purpose others may have had for him, he is but an innocent caught in the currents of fate." The gatekeeper bowed. "As you command, Allfather." The Bifrost roared to life, its rainbow energies swirling into a column of pure cosmic force. Odin stepped into its embrace, and reality bent around him. In the space between heartbeats, he traveled across the vast gulf separating Asgard from Midgard, his form materializing on the mountainside in a cascade of shimmering light. The night air was cool and thin at this altitude. Odin could see the stars above, so much dimmer and fewer from Midgard's surface than from Asgard's celestial heights. The pod lay before him, partially buried in the earth from its violent landing. Vegetation around it was scorched, and the ground bore a crater that spoke of tremendous impact force. As Odin approached, the crying grew louder. He could feel the child's distress like a physical thing, waves of fear and confusion radiating outward. Whatever journey had brought him here had been traumatic, and the child's young mind could not process the abandonment he felt. With a touch of Gungnir's tip against the pod's surface, Odin sent a pulse of Odin force through the alien metal. Mechanisms clicked and whirred, and the pod began to open, its two halves separating like a mechanical flower blooming in the moonlight. The crying stopped abruptly as the child found himself suddenly exposed to open air. Odin looked down at the small figure, and the child looked up at him. For a moment either moved. The boy's eyes were large and dark, still wet with tears. His face was smudged with dirt, and his tiny body trembled. Whether from cold or fear, Odin could not tell. But then something remarkable happened. The child smiled. It was a small, uncertain smile, but it transformed his face completely. Despite everything, the trauma of his journey, the strangeness of his situation, the towering figure of an armored god looming over him, the child smiled. There was no guile in it, no calculation, just pure, innocent hope that perhaps, finally, someone had come for him. Odin felt something shift in his ancient heart. He had seen countless warriors fall in battle, had witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations, had made decisions that affected millions of lives. But this small smile, offered freely despite all reason to be terrified, moved him in a way that few things could anymore. "Hello, little one," Odin said softly, lowering himself to one knee so he would seem less imposing. "You have traveled far and endured much. But your journey has ended. You are safe now." The child tilted his head, clearly not understanding the words but responding to the gentle tone. He reached up with small hands, making grasping motions. The gesture was universal, a child wanting to be held, to be comforted. Odin set Gungnir aside and carefully lifted the boy from the pod. The child was lighter than expected, his body small and fragile despite the power that hummed beneath his skin. As soon as he was in Odin's arms, the boy stopped trembling. His tail unwrapped from his waist and wrapped instead around Odin's armored forearm, holding on with surprising strength. "What is your name, child?" Odin asked, though he suspected there would be no answer. The boy was too young, and whatever language his people spoke was surely unknown to Midgard and Asgard alike. The child babbled something that might have been an attempt at speech, but it was unintelligible. He patted Odin's bearded face with one small hand, fascinated by the texture. Then he yawned, exhaustion finally overtaking him now that he felt safe. His eyes began to droop. Odin examined the pod more carefully, looking for any clues to the child's origins. Inside, he found a small device with a cracked screen, some sort of monitoring equipment, perhaps. Strange symbols scrolled across it, but they meant nothing to him. There was also a small blanket, well-worn and soft, which Odin retrieved to wrap around the child. As he worked, Odin's mind raced with possibilities. This child's power was unlike anything he had encountered before. It wasn't magical in nature like the Odin Force, nor did it draw from any of the cosmic forces he recognized. It was something innate, something that came from within the child himself. And if these readings were accurate when the boy was barely more than an infant, what would he become when fully grown and trained? The thought was both exciting and sobering. "My lord?" Heimdall's voice touched his mind again. "Is all well?" "Open the Bifrost, my friend," Odin replied. "I am bringing the child home." The rainbow bridge descended once more, and Odin stepped into its embrace with his newfound charge. The child stirred as they traveled through the cosmic pathway, his eyes opening wide to stare at the kaleidoscope of colors surrounding them. Instead of fear, Odin saw wonder on the small face. The boy laughed, a pure, delighted sound, and reached out as if trying to catch the swirling energies. They emerged in the Bifrost Observatory, where Heimdall waited. The gatekeeper's expression was carefully neutral, but Odin knew him well enough to see the concern lurking beneath. He is powerful, Heimdall confirmed, studying the child with his all-seeing gaze. And there is something wild about his nature, untamed, like a storm that knows not its own strength. Then we shall teach him, Odin said simply. Just as we taught Thor to temper his passion and Loki to channel his cunning. This child will learn wisdom and honor, strength and mercy. You intend to raise him as your own? Heimdall asked, though it was clear the answer was already known. I do, Odin confirmed. He looked down at the child in his arms, who had fallen asleep against his chest, tiny hand clutching his beard. He needs a home, and we have one to give. Whatever fate brought him to Midgard, whatever purpose others intended for him, he deserves the chance to forge his own path. Heimdall bowed deeply. Then welcome home, young prince. The walk from the Bifrost to the palace proper was a long one, but Odin took his time, in no hurry despite the late hour. He wanted to think, to prepare himself for the conversation ahead. Frigga would understand, she always did, but Thor and Loki were another matter. How would his sons react to a new brother? The palace was quiet at this hour, most of its inhabitants long since retired to their chambers. Guards stood at their posts but said nothing as their king passed by, though Odin saw their curious glances at the small bundle in his arms. News would spread by morning, he knew, the Allfather returning from a mysterious errand with an infant of unknown origin. The court would be abuzz with speculation. Let them talk. Odin had weathered far worse than gossip. He found Frigga in their private chambers, sitting by the window with a book in her lap. She looked up as he entered, her beautiful face serene in the soft light of the enchanted lanterns, but her expression shifted to surprise when she saw what he carried. Odin? She said, setting her book aside and rising gracefully. What is this? This, Odin said, approaching her, is a child I found on Midgard. His vessel came from beyond the 9 realms, and he was alone inside it. I could not leave him there. Frigga's eyes softened immediately as she looked at the sleeping child. She was a mother to her core, and the sight of any child in need touched her deeply. She reached out carefully, brushing her fingers against the boy's cheek. He is so small, she whispered. And his tail, what manner of creature is he? I know not, Odin admitted. But his power is considerable, even now. With proper training, he could become one of the greatest warriors in all the realms. But more than that, my love, he smiled at me. Despite his fear, despite his abandonment, he smiled and reached for comfort. That speaks of a good heart, whatever his bloodline might be. Frigga smiled, and Odin knew he had already won her over. Then we shall give him what he needs: love, guidance, and a family. What shall we call him? We cannot simply refer to him as the child. Odin considered this carefully. Names held power, especially in Asgard. They could shape destiny, define purpose. This child would need a name that honored both his unknown heritage and his new home. Goku, he said finally. It has a strong sound, fitting for a warrior. And it carries no expectations beyond what he makes of it himself. Goku, Frigga repeated, testing the name. She smiled and nodded. Yes, I think that suits him well. Come, let us put young Goku to bed. Tomorrow will be soon enough to introduce him to his brothers. They prepared a small cot in an antechamber near their own quarters, not yet ready to give the child his own room until they understood more about his needs. As Odin laid him down, wrapping him carefully in soft blankets, Goku stirred. His eyes opened, and for a moment, Odin thought he would cry again at finding himself in yet another unfamiliar place. But then Frigga leaned over him, singing softly in the ancient tongue of Asgard. It was a lullaby she had sung to Thor and Loki in their infancy, a melody of protection and love. Goku's eyes tracked her face, and his small hand reached up toward her. She took it gently, continuing her song, and slowly, his eyes closed once more. He trusts so easily, Frigga murmured once she was certain he was asleep. After all he has endured. Perhaps he knows, on some level, that he has finally found safety, Odin replied. He placed a hand on her shoulder. Or perhaps it is simply his nature to see the good in others, to trust before there is reason for suspicion. If so, we must nurture that quality even as we teach him caution. The realms need more who lead with their hearts. They retired to their own chamber, though Odin found sleep elusive. He lay awake, his mind turning over the events of the night. Somewhere in the cosmos, on a world he could not name, someone had made the decision to send a child away. Whether it was done in love or cruelty, he might never know. But from this night forward, that child would know a father's protection and a mother's love. As dawn broke over Asgard, painting the golden spires in hues of rose and amber, Goku awoke. His cries brought both Odin and Frigga running, but they were not cries of fear this time. The child was simply hungry, announcing his needs with impressive lung capacity. Frigga laughed as she prepared food suitable for a young child, soft bread soaked in warm milk, mashed fruits from Asgard's gardens. Goku attacked the meal with enthusiasm that startled them both, eating more than seemed possible for someone his size. His appetite was prodigious, and Odin made a mental note to ensure the kitchens were prepared for this new demand. I think, Frigga said dryly as she prepared a third helping, that feeding this one is going to require significantly more resources than his brothers did. As if summoned by the mention, voices echoed from the hallway. Thor's boisterous laugh and Loki's more measured tones approached the chamber. Odin and Frigga exchanged glances. The moment of introduction had arrived sooner than expected. The door burst open, and Thor strode in with all the confidence of a young prince who had never known a door he couldn't open. Father! Mother! The guards are all talking about. He stopped mid-sentence, staring at the small child sitting on the floor, face covered in mashed fruit. Loki appeared behind him, his sharp eyes taking in the scene with calculating speed. Is that a baby? Thor asked, his voice mixing confusion with curiosity. With a tail? Goku looked up at the newcomers, sticky hands pausing in their journey to his mouth. He stared at Thor with wide eyes, taking in the golden hair and the bright smile. Then he looked at Loki, studying the dark-haired prince with equal interest. Come in, my sons, Odin said, gesturing them forward. Meet your new brother. This is Goku. Brother? Both boys said in unison, though with very different inflections. Thor's was excited, Loki skeptical. He came from beyond the 9 realms, Frigga explained, wiping Goku's face with a cloth while the child squirmed. Your father found him abandoned and alone. He is part of our family now. Thor approached without hesitation, kneeling beside the small child. Hello, little brother. I am Thor Odinson, mightiest warrior of... Ow! Goku had reached out and grabbed a handful of Thor's golden hair, tugging with surprising strength. Instead of crying out in pain or anger, Thor laughed. Strong grip. Father, he will make a fine warrior indeed. Loki hung back, watching the interaction with guarded eyes. He is not Asgardian, he observed. Nor is he of any race I recognize. What is he? We do not know, Odin admitted. But it matters not. He is family now, and that is all you need understand. Something flickered across Loki's face at those words, an emotion too quick to identify. But he moved closer, studying Goku with the intense focus he brought to all his interests. His power signature is unusual. I can sense it even without trying. It is raw, unrefined. Goku released Thor's hair and reached for Loki instead, making grabbing motions. The dark-haired prince hesitated, then carefully picked up the child. Goku immediately began patting Loki's face, fascinated by the contrast between his pale skin and dark hair. He likes you, Frigga said warmly. He is merely curious, Loki replied, but there was a softness in his expression that belied his words. How old is he? Difficult to say, Odin replied. Perhaps 3 years by mortal reckoning, though his people may age differently. We know nothing of his background save that he came from the stars. Like Loki came from Jotunheim, Thor said without thinking, then winced as he realized his mistake. It was a sensitive subject, Loki's adoption, his frost giant heritage. The family did not speak of it often. The chamber fell silent. Loki's jaw tightened, and he looked away, still holding Goku. But the child, oblivious to the tension, simply smiled at him and patted his cheek again, as if to say it was all right. Yes, Odin said firmly, meeting Loki's eyes. As Loki came to us, so has Goku. Both of you are my sons, regardless of your birth. Blood does not make a family. Love and loyalty do. Loki said nothing, but his arms tightened slightly around Goku, holding him closer. Thor, never one to let awkward moments linger, jumped to his feet. Then we must celebrate. A feast. Father, we should hold a feast to welcome our new brother. In time, Frigga said, amused. For now, let us focus on helping Goku adjust to his new home. He has been through much, and he needs patience and gentleness. I can be gentle, Thor protested. You knocked over 3 serving maids yesterday during sword practice, Loki pointed out dryly. That was different. They were in the way. As his sons bickered in the familiar pattern that Odin had come to expect, Goku laughed. It was a delighted, bubbling sound that filled the chamber with warmth. Both Thor and Loki stopped mid-argument to stare at him, and then, despite themselves, they smiled too. He has a good laugh, Thor declared. I like him already. Over the following days, the palace adjusted to its newest resident. Goku proved to be an endlessly curious child, exploring every corner of the rooms he was allowed into with boundless energy. His strength was remarkable. He could already walk, though his steps were still uncertain, and he could lift objects that should have been far too heavy for someone his size. The tail proved to be quite expressive, swishing back and forth when he was happy, wrapping around things when he was nervous. The court physician examined him thoroughly, finding him to be in good health despite his ordeal, though his physiology was indeed unlike anything in Asgard's medical texts. His bone density is extraordinary, the physician reported to Odin. His muscle structure is incredibly efficient. And his energy reserves, my lord, I have never seen anything quite like it. He is like a star contained in flesh, constantly generating power. What will he become when he reaches maturity? It was a question Odin asked himself often as he watched Goku grow more comfortable in his new home. The child attached himself to his new family with ease that was both touching and, in some ways, concerning. He showed no signs of trauma from his abandonment, no nightmares or fears. It was as if he had simply accepted that this was his life now, and he was determined to enjoy it. Thor took to his role as big brother with enthusiasm, constantly playing with Goku and teaching him Asgardian words. The little one learned quickly, soaking up knowledge like a sponge. Within weeks, he could say Thor and hungry and more, the latter becoming perhaps his most commonly used word. Loki's relationship with Goku was more complex. The younger prince would often sit and watch the child play, his expression thoughtful. Sometimes he would teach Goku simple tricks, how to stack blocks, how to identify colors. Other times, he would simply hold him, as if drawing comfort from the child's uncomplicated affection. One evening, Odin found Loki sitting in the gardens with Goku asleep in his lap. The younger prince was staring up at the stars, his face troubled. May I join you, my son? Odin asked quietly. Loki nodded, and Odin sat beside him on the bench. For a long moment neither spoke. The gardens were peaceful at this hour, the flowers releasing their evening scents into the cool air. He does not know that he is different, Loki said finally. He looks around and sees his family, and he believes he belongs because we tell him he does. He trusts us completely. As he should, Odin replied gently. As you should. I know my origins, father, Loki said, his voice barely above a whisper. I know what I am, beneath the lies and the pretty words. But Goku, he has no memory of his real family, of his true people. Is it fair to raise him in ignorance? To let him believe he is one of us when he is so clearly something else? Odin was quiet for a moment, choosing his words with care. What makes someone one of us, Loki? Is it the blood in their veins? The shape of their body? Or is it something deeper? Shared values, shared love, shared commitment to protecting what we hold dear? Words, Loki said bitterly. When I look in the mirror, I see an Asgardian. But that is just another of Mother's spells, is it not? A glamour to hide what I really am. You see what you are, Odin corrected firmly. A spell might change the appearance of your flesh, but it cannot change your heart, your mind, your soul. Those are yours and yours alone, and the same will be true for Goku. Whatever his origins, whatever power flows through his veins, he will be shaped by the choices he makes, the values we instill in him. He placed a hand on Loki's shoulder. I will not lie to either of you about your origins. When Goku is old enough to understand, he will know his story, just as you know yours. But that knowledge does not diminish his place in this family, just as your knowledge does not diminish yours. You are my son. He is my son. Thor is my son. That is the truth that matters. Loki was silent for a long moment, then nodded slowly. He looked down at Goku, who slept peacefully, his tail wrapped loosely around Loki's wrist. He deserves better than to be used as a weapon, whatever his people intended. He deserves to be happy. Then we shall ensure he is, Odin said simply. As spring turned to summer in Asgard's endless cycle of seasons, Goku continued to grow and learn. He spoke in short sentences now, his vocabulary expanding daily. His laughter echoed through the palace halls, and even the most stern-faced guards found themselves smiling when the young prince toddled by. But it was during the summer feast, when the full moon rose over Asgard's mountains, that Odin's understanding of his new son took a dramatic turn. The celebration was being held in one of the palace's open courtyards, tables laden with food and drink, though only tea and juice for the younger attendees. Thor was regaling anyone who would listen with tales of his latest training victories, while Loki performed minor illusions to amuse the younger children. Goku sat with Frigga, eating his way through an impressive amount of food while she laughed at his enthusiasm. It was perfect, until it wasn't. Odin felt it first, a surge of power from Goku that made his mystical senses scream a warning. He looked up to see the child staring at the full moon that had just risen above the courtyard walls, his eyes fixed on its surface with an intensity that was deeply wrong. Frigga! Odin shouted, already moving. Get everyone back! But it was too late. Goku's small body began to convulse, his eyes turning red. He opened his mouth, and instead of words or cries, an inhuman roar emerged. His body grew, expanding at an impossible rate, first sprouting across his skin as his features elongated into a muzzle. Chaos erupted in the courtyard as guests scattered, warriors reaching for weapons. Within seconds, where a small child had been, there now stood a giant ape, easily 30 feet tall, with brown fur and blazing red eyes. It beat its chest and roared again, the sound echoing across Asgard like thunder. The great ape that had been Goku looked around with mindless fury, and Odin realized with horror that there was no recognition in those eyes. The child was gone, replaced by pure primal instinct. Thor! Loki! Stand back! Odin commanded as his sons moved to confront the beast. He raised Gungnir, not to attack but to defend, as the creature's gaze fixed on the nearest target, a group of terrified courtiers. The ape moved with frightening speed, its massive fist swinging down toward them. Odin called upon the Odin Force, erecting a barrier of golden light that caught the blow with a thunderous crash. The impact drove him back several feet, his boots scoring the stone courtyard. It is Goku! Frigga cried out. Odin, you cannot harm him. I know, Odin gritted out, maintaining the barrier as the ape hammered at it again and again. Each blow contained enough force to level buildings, and it was taking considerable effort to keep the beast contained without hurting it. Thor charged forward, Mjolnir appearing in his hand. I will stop it, father. No! Odin commanded. Look at its eyes. There is no mind there, only instinct. It does not know us. If we fight it, we may injure Goku when he returns to himself. Loki's voice cut through the chaos, sharp and clear. The moon! Father, it looked at the moon before it changed. Odin's eye widened with understanding. A transformation triggered by the full moon. He had read of such curses in ancient texts, though never witnessed one. But how to reverse it? If they simply waited, the creature could destroy half the palace in its rampage. The ape broke through a section of the barrier, and Odin had no choice but to act more aggressively. He channeled more of the Odin force through Gungnir, wrapping bands of golden energy around the creature's limbs, restraining it. The ape roared and struggled, but even its incredible strength could not break free from the Allfather's power. Heimdall! Odin called out, his voice carrying across the realm through mystical means. I need you at the palace, now. The Bifrost activated, and within moments, the gatekeeper materialized beside them. His golden eyes took in the scene instantly, and understanding dawned on his face. The child has transformed, Heimdall said. His power has increased 100-fold in this state. My lord, if you wish to help him, I believe I know what must be done. Speak quickly, Odin commanded, straining to hold the writhing ape. His tail, Heimdall said, pointing to the brown furred appendage that lashed back and forth. It is the source of the connection. Remove it, and the transformation should end. Remove his tail? Frigga gasped. You mean to mutilate the child? I mean to save him, Heimdall replied grimly. And everyone else in this courtyard. That creature knows only rage and hunger. It will not stop until it is exhausted or dead. Would you prefer that outcome? Odin's mind raced. Heimdall was right. In this state, Goku was a danger to himself and everyone around him. And yet to physically alter the child without his consent. The ape broke one arm free and swung at the gathered crowd again. This time, Thor intercepted, using Mjolnir to deflect the blow into the sky. The impact sent a shockwave rippling outward, shattering windows throughout the palace. Do it, Odin decided. There was no other choice. He manipulated the golden bands, forcing the ape to its knees and immobilizing it completely. The creature fought against the restraints with such fury that cracks began to appear in the courtyard stones. Heimdall drew his sword, its blade gleaming with otherworldly light. Forgive me, young prince, Heimdall murmured, and with one swift stroke, he severed the tail. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The ape's roar cut off mid-bellow, its body beginning to shrink. For retracted, features reformed, and within seconds, Goku lay on the cracked stones of the courtyard, small and human once more. He was unconscious, his face peaceful despite the devastation surrounding him. Frigga ran to him, gathering him into her arms and checking him for injuries. He is unharmed, she said with relief. But exhausted. His body temperature is elevated. The transformation took a terrible toll on him. Odin dismissed Gungnir and knelt beside his wife and youngest son. The severed tail lay nearby, already beginning to dissolve into motes of light and energy. Will it grow back? He asked Heimdall. The gatekeeper's all-seeing eyes studied Goku carefully. I cannot say for certain, my lord. His biology is unlike anything in my knowledge. But the danger has passed for now. He will not transform again tonight, regardless. Thor and Loki approached cautiously, staring at their youngest brother with a mix of awe and concern. That was incredible, Thor said quietly. The power he commanded in that form was uncontrolled and dangerous, Odin finished. This is what I feared. Goku possesses strength beyond his ability to manage. We must find a way to help him control this, or it could destroy him. Can it be done? Loki asked. If the transformation is instinctual, triggered by the moon itself, how can a child hope to master it? Odin stood, his expression grave but determined. The same way anyone masters their nature, through training, discipline, and time. We will teach him. We will help him understand what he is and how to control it. But first, we must understand it ourselves. Over the following weeks, Odin devoted himself to studying every text in Asgard's vast libraries, searching for any mention of moon-triggered transformations or races that possessed such abilities. He found references to werewolves and other shapeshifters, but nothing that quite matched what he had witnessed in Goku. The child himself remembered nothing of his transformation. When he awoke the next morning, confused by the fuss being made over him, Odin sat him down and carefully explained what had happened. Goku listened with wide eyes, his small face scrunched in concentration. I turned into a monster? He asked, his voice small and frightened. You transformed, Odin corrected gently. Into something powerful but uncontrolled. It was not your fault, little one. It is simply part of who you are. But I hurt people? Tears welled in Goku's eyes. I did not mean to. No one was hurt, Frigga assured him, pulling him into her lap. Your father protected everyone. And now we know what to watch for. We will help you, darling. You need not fear this. But Goku did fear it, Odin could see. The child became quieter, more cautious, as if afraid that any strong emotion might trigger another transformation. He stopped playing as roughly with Thor, worried he might hurt his brother. He flinched at loud noises and avoided looking at the night sky. It broke Odin's heart to see the light dimmed in his youngest son's eyes. This cannot continue, he told Frigga one night as they watched Goku sleep fitfully in his bed. He is afraid of his own nature, and fear will not help him master it. We need a different approach. What do you suggest? Frigga asked. Odin was quiet for a long moment, then nodded to himself as he reached a decision. I will craft an enchantment for him, not to suppress his power, that would only build pressure until it exploded, but to help him become aware of it. To feel when the transformation approaches so that he might learn, in time, to control it. And if he cannot learn control, then we will deal with that when the time comes, Odin said firmly. But I have faith in him, Frigga. Did you see how quickly he learned to speak? How eagerly he soaks up everything we teach him. That mind, that heart, they are gifts. Given time and proper training, I believe Goku will master this, just as Thor will master his temper and Loki his pride. And so Odin spent long hours in his forge, working runes of awareness and self-control into a simple leather band. It was not a restraint but a tool, a way for Goku to sense the pull of the moon and the beast within before it overwhelmed him. When it was complete, he fastened it around the child's wrist. This will help you feel when your power grows, Odin explained. It will warm against your skin, giving you warning. In time, you will learn to recognize that feeling without the band's aid. And perhaps, one day, you will master the transformation itself, calling upon that strength when you choose rather than when the moon commands. Goku touched the band reverently. Thank you, father, he whispered. You are welcome, my son, Odin replied, ruffling the child's wild black hair. Now, no more fear. You are of Asgard now, and we do not cower from our own nature. We master it. Do you understand? Goku straightened, a spark of his old confidence returning to his eyes. Yes, father. I understand. And as summer turned to autumn in Asgard's golden realm, life slowly returned to normal. Goku began playing with his brothers again, his laughter once more echoing through the halls. The band helped. He would come running to Odin or Frigga when it warmed, and they would take him inside, away from the moon's influence, until the danger passed. But Odin knew this was merely the beginning. Goku's power was still growing, still developing. The transformation was just one aspect of whatever heritage ran through his veins. What other abilities might emerge as he aged? What other challenges would they face? Whatever came, Odin was determined to face it as a father should, with patience, wisdom, and unwavering love. He had made a choice that night on Midgard's mountainside, and he would not waver from it now. Goku was his son. And he would ensure the boy had every chance to become not just powerful, but good, a warrior with strength tempered by mercy, pride balanced by humility, and confidence grounded in compassion. As Odin stood on the palace balcony one evening, watching his 3 sons play in the gardens below, he felt a sense of rightness settle over him. Thor with his booming laugh, teaching Goku how to throw a wooden sword. Loki reading to them both from a book of legends, his voice bringing the stories to life. And Goku, bright-eyed and eager, soaking in every moment with his brothers. This was his family. Not by blood alone, but by choice and love. And whatever challenges the future held, they would face them together. The Allfather smiled and turned back to his duties, secure in the knowledge that he had made the right decision. The child from the stars had found his home among the gods, and Asgard was richer for it. The future would tell what Goku would become. But for now, he was simply a child, loved, protected, and home, and that was enough. 10 years had passed since Odin carried a crying infant through the Bifrost, and Asgard had transformed in ways both subtle and profound. The child who had arrived in a broken pod was now a boy of 13 summers, and the palace halls echoed daily with his enthusiastic shouts and boundless energy. Goku Odinson stood in the training grounds, his black hair plastered to his forehead with sweat, his chest heaving as he faced his opponent. Across from him, Thor grinned with the confidence of someone who had never truly known defeat, Mjolnir resting easily in his grip. Again, little brother? Thor called out, his voice carrying across the grounds where other young warriors had stopped their own training to watch. You have already been knocked down 7 times this morning. Perhaps you should rest. 8 times, Goku corrected, wiping blood from his split lip with the back of his hand. His tail, which had indeed grown back within a year of its severing, swished with determination behind him. And I can go 8 more. I am a prince of Asgard. We do not quit. Pride flickered across Thor's face at those words. Well spoken. Then come, show me what you have learned. Goku launched himself forward with speed that would have seemed impossible for someone his size. His Saiyan physiology, combined with years of Asgardian combat training, had created something unique. A warrior who moved like lightning and hit like thunder. His fist crashed into Thor's hastily raised arm with a resounding crack that sent shockwaves rippling through the air. Thor slid backward several feet, surprise evident on his face. By Odin's beard! Your strength has increased again. Master Tyr says I grow stronger after every battle, Goku replied, already moving in for another strike. He says my body adapts, learns. So I must keep fighting to keep growing. Their sparring match continued with increasing intensity. Thor was still the superior fighter. His centuries of experience and godly strength gave him advantages that Goku could not yet match, but the gap was narrowing with each passing month. Every time Goku fell, he rose faster. Every time he was struck, his next counter came quicker. From the observation platform overlooking the training grounds, Odin watched with Tyr, the god of war and Goku's primary combat instructor. The one-armed warrior stroked his beard thoughtfully as he observed his youngest student. He improves at a rate I have never witnessed, my king, Tyr said quietly. When he first came to me 5 years ago, he could barely lift a practice sword. Now he can trade blows with Thor, who is among our finest warriors. This is not normal growth. No, Odin agreed. It is not. His Saiyan blood gifts him with something we Asgardians lack. The ability to grow exponentially through combat. Each fight pushes his limits, and his body responds by shattering those limits entirely. If this continues, he may one day surpass even Thor in raw strength, and yet Tyr observed he lacks Thor's killer instinct. Watch, even now, when he has an opening to strike, he hesitates. He pulls his blows, afraid of truly hurting his brother. Odin nodded slowly. He remembers his transformation all those years ago. The fear of losing control haunts him still, despite our best efforts. He has mastered the Great Ape form. He can now transform at will and maintain his mind, but that memory of mindless destruction remains. It makes him cautious. Caution is not always a weakness, my king, no, Odin said. But in battle, hesitation can mean death. He must learn to trust himself, to know that he can unleash his full power without becoming a monster. That is a lesson only he can teach himself. Down in the training grounds, the sparring match was reaching its conclusion. Goku had managed to land several solid hits, and Thor was actually breathing hard now, a rarity for the god of thunder, but experience won out in the end. Thor feinted left, Goku took the bait, and Mjolnir's flat side caught him squarely in the chest, sending him flying backward to crash into the practice dummy posts. Goku lay there for a moment, staring up at the impossibly blue Asgardian sky, his body aching pleasantly. Then he started laughing, a pure, joyous sound that made Thor's grin widen. Why do you laugh, brother? Thor asked, offering his hand to help Goku up. You have just been defeated, because it was a good fight. Goku replied, clasping Thor's forearm and allowing himself to be pulled to his feet. And because next time, I will be stronger. I will get you then. Perhaps you will, Thor said warmly, clapping him on the shoulder hard enough to stagger a normal man. You have the heart of a true warrior, Goku. Father would be proud. Father is proud, came Odin's voice as the Allfather descended from the observation platform, Tyr at his side. Both of my sons have fought well today. Goku's face lit up at the praise. Despite a decade in Asgard, he still craved his father's approval with an earnestness that was entirely genuine. There was no calculation in it, no political maneuvering, just a son wanting to make his father proud. Thank you, father, Goku said, bowing respectfully despite his exhaustion. But I still have much to learn. Thor is far stronger than I am. For now, Odin said, his single eye twinkling with amusement. But strength is not the only measure of a warrior. Come, both of you. Clean yourselves and join your mother and brother for the midday meal. We have much to discuss. As they walked toward the palace, Tyr fell into step beside Goku. You left yourself open on your right side 3 times during that match, the war god said bluntly. Any competent opponent would have exploited that weakness. I know, Goku admitted, his tail drooping slightly. I am trying to guard it better, but when I attack I forget. Then you must train until guarding becomes as natural as breathing, Tyr said. Tomorrow, we will work on defensive stances, and perhaps I will have Sif join us. Her technique is more refined than Thor's brute force approach. You could benefit from studying different styles. Goku brightened at that. Lady Sif was one of his favorite people in all of Asgard, fierce, skilled, and never condescending despite the age difference. She treated him like a true warrior rather than a child playing at war. I would like that very much, Master Tyr. The one-armed warrior nodded approvingly. Good. Now go. You smell like a bilgesnipe. Your mother will not appreciate you arriving at her table in such a state. Goku and Thor parted ways at the bathing chambers, each heading to their respective rooms to clean up. Goku's chambers were smaller than Thor's grand suite but still luxurious beyond anything he could have imagined in his forgotten infancy. Tapestries depicting great Asgardian battles hung on the walls, and his weapon collection, gifts from various instructors over the years, was displayed with pride. As he washed away the sweat and dirt of training, Goku studied his reflection in the polished bronze mirror. He had grown considerably over the past decade, now standing nearly as tall as Loki though still shorter than Thor. His black hair remained perpetually wild, defying all attempts at grooming. His eyes were dark and expressive, often giving away his thoughts before he spoke. And his tail, that undeniable mark of his alien heritage, swished behind him, as much a part of him as any arm or leg. He had learned to control it over the years, to use it as an additional limb in combat, or to express emotions he sometimes struggled to voice. Right now, it hung low, reflecting his mild disappointment at his loss to Thor. You are getting stronger, he told his reflection, practicing the confidence that came so naturally to Thor. Every day stronger. One day, you will be the greatest warrior in Asgard. But even as he said the words, doubt crept in. Would he ever truly be Asgardian? Oh, everyone treated him as one of them. He was a prince, after all, with all the privileges that entailed. But he could not help noticing the differences. The way other Asgardians aged so slowly while he seemed to grow and change every few months. The way his appetite dwarfed even Thor's legendary hunger. The power that sometimes surged through him during fights, threatening to break free of his control. And always, the knowledge that somewhere among the stars, there existed others like him. His true people, whoever they were. A knock on his door interrupted his brooding. Goku? Are you nearly ready? It was Loki's voice, calm and measured as always. Coming. Goku called, quickly throwing on clean clothes, the formal training attire that marked him as a prince of Asgard. The outfit was primarily blue and silver, with gold accents that matched his brother's colors. His tail he left visible, having long ago abandoned any attempt to hide it. Loki waited in the corridor, looking immaculate as always despite having spent his own morning in study rather than combat. Where Thor and Goku bore the marks of physical training, Loki's education focused on magic, strategy, and statecraft. He was, in many ways, the perfect complement to his more martially inclined brothers. You fought well today, Loki said as they walked together toward the dining hall. I watched from the library tower. You nearly had Thor at one point. The combination strike you attempted was clever. Nearly is not enough, Goku said with frustration. I need to be faster, stronger. You need to be patient, Loki interrupted. You are 13, Goku. Thor is over 1,000 years old. That you can even compete with him at your age is remarkable. Give yourself time to grow. Goku's tail swished thoughtfully. You are right, I know. But it is hard to be patient when there is so much to learn, so much to become. Sometimes I feel like I am racing against something, though I do not know what. Loki gave him a sharp look but said nothing. Of the three brothers, Loki understood Goku's position best. The adopted son, the one who was different, the one who sometimes felt like an outsider despite all evidence to the contrary. They had bonded over this shared experience, though they rarely spoke of it directly. They arrived at the private dining hall to find Thor already seated, his hair still damp from his own bath, enthusiastically describing his morning's training to Frigga. The All-Mother listened with patient amusement, occasionally interjecting questions that showed she was truly paying attention rather than merely indulging him. And then Goku actually managed to surprise me, Thor was saying. His speed has increased remarkably. For a moment, I thought he might actually land a decisive blow. I am glad your brother keeps you on your toes, Frigga said warmly. She noticed Goku and Loki entering and smiled. Ah, there you are. Come, sit. The cooks have prepared your favorites. Indeed, the table was laden with enough food to feed a small army. This was necessary when one of your sons could eat his weight in food at a single sitting. Goku had learned to moderate his appetite somewhat in formal settings, but his family never made him feel ashamed of his needs. If anything, Frigga seemed to take pride in ensuring he was well fed, often slipping him extra portions when she thought no one was looking. As they ate, or in Goku's case, devoured their meal, Odin arrived, his expression thoughtful. He took his place at the head of the table and studied his three sons with an intensity that made even Thor pause mid-bite. "My sons," Odin began, his voice carrying the weight of importance. "You are no longer children. Thor, you have become one of our finest warriors. Loki, your mastery of magic and strategy grows daily. And Goku, you have exceeded all expectations in your training. The time has come to expand your education beyond Asgard's walls." 3 pairs of eyes fixed on him with varying degrees of excitement and curiosity. "What do you mean, father?" Thor asked. "I mean that you must learn of the 9 realms beyond our golden city," Odin said. "You must understand the peoples we protect, their cultures, their needs. You must learn what it means to be not just warriors, but leaders. Protectors. Kings, perhaps, if that becomes your destiny." He turned his gaze specifically to Goku. "And you, my son, must learn of worlds beyond even the 9 realms. Heimdall has been searching, and he believes he may have found the star system from which your pod originated. If you wish to know more of your heritage, the time has come to seek those answers." Goku's heart hammered in his chest. For years, he had wondered about his origins, but the question had always seemed too distant, too hypothetical to truly matter. Now, suddenly, it was real. Somewhere out there, among the infinite stars, there might be others like him. People who could explain the power that thrummed through his veins, the transformations, the insatiable drive to grow stronger. But did he want to know? Was he prepared for what he might discover? Goku began, then paused, unsure of what he wanted to say. "I do not know if I am ready, father." "No one is ever truly ready," Odin said gently. "But the question will haunt you if left unanswered. I do not propose that you travel there immediately. You are still young, and there is much to prepare. But within the next few years, I think you should make the journey. See what can be learned. And then decide for yourself what that knowledge means." "Will he go alone?" Frigga asked, concern evident in her voice. "No," Odin said firmly. "When the time comes, he will not travel alone. But that is a discussion for another day. For now, I speak only of preparation, of ensuring that all my sons understand the scope of the universe beyond our realm." The conversation moved on to other topics. Plans for the upcoming Harvest Festival, reports from Heimdall about stirrings in the darker corners of the 9 realms, Thor's request to lead a patrol to investigate some disturbance in Vanaheim. But Goku found his attention drifting, his mind consumed by the possibility that had just been laid before him. After the meal concluded and they were dismissed, Goku wandered the palace gardens, seeking solitude to think. The gardens were his favorite place in all of Asgard, a perfect blend of wild nature and careful cultivation, much like he imagined himself to be. He found a quiet spot beneath a golden leaf tree and sat, his tail wrapping around his waist in a self-comforting gesture he had never quite outgrown. What would he find if he sought his origins? Would there be a world full of people with tails and incredible power? Would they welcome him, this child raised by gods? Or would they reject him as an outsider, too Asgardian to be one of them? Heavy thoughts for one so young, came a familiar voice. Goku looked up to find Lady Sif approaching, her armor gleaming in the afternoon sun. She carried her sword and shield, having clearly just come from her own training. "Lady Sif," Goku greeted, starting to rise, but she waved him back down. "None of that formality between warriors," she said, sitting beside him with casual grace. "What troubles you? Thor mentioned that you seemed distracted during training this morning." Goku hesitated, then decided that if anyone would understand, it would be Sif. She had always been straightforward with him, never coddling or treating him as lesser despite his youth. "Father says he may have found the star system where I came from," Goku admitted. "He wants me to consider traveling there one day, to learn of my heritage." Sif was quiet for a moment, her sharp eyes studying him. "And you are afraid of what you might find?" It was not a question, so Goku did not bother denying it. "I am afraid I will find nothing, that my people are all gone, that I am alone." But I am also afraid I will find everything, that there is a whole world of beings like me, and I will realize I never belonged here at all. Either answer feels wrong. You belong here, Sif said with absolute certainty. Not because of where you were born or what blood runs through your veins, but because you have earned your place. You train harder than anyone I have ever seen. You are kind when you could be cruel, humble when you could be proud. You make those around you better simply by being who you are. That is what makes you one of us, Goku. Not your heritage, but your choices. But what if my true people need me? Goku asked quietly. What if there is a reason I was sent away, and by staying here, I am abandoning some duty I was meant to fulfill? Then you face that when the time comes, Sif replied. But you face it as who you are, a prince of Asgard, trained in our ways, carrying our values. Whatever you discover about your past, it does not erase your present. You are Goku Odinson, and that name carries weight. Let it ground you when other truths threaten to shake your foundation. Goku felt some of the tension ease from his shoulders. Thank you, Lady Sif. Your words help. Good, she said, rising smoothly. Now stop brooding and come spar with me. I heard your plans to have us work together tomorrow, and I want to see what you can do before I have to adjust my teaching style. Despite his melancholy mood, Goku found himself smiling. You mean you want to beat me up and call it training? Exactly, Sif agreed with a grin. Come on, little prince. Show me if you are as quick as Thor claims. They spent the next hour in the training grounds, and true to her word, Sif thoroughly tested Goku's abilities. Unlike Thor's straightforward power, Sif fought with precision and technique, exploiting every opening with ruthless efficiency. By the time they finished, Goku had a new collection of bruises and a healthy respect for the warrior woman's skills. But more importantly, he felt centered again. Whatever questions lay in his future, he had this moment, this place, these people who loved him. That had to be enough. As weeks turned to months, life in Asgard settled into comfortable patterns. Goku's training intensified under Tyr's guidance, now supplemented by lessons from Sif, Fandral, Hogan, and Volstagg, the warriors three who had taken a collective interest in the young prince's development. Your footwork is still sloppy, Fandral critiqued during a fencing lesson, his rapier dancing circles around Goku's heavier blade. You have power, yes, but power without grace is just flailing. Watch, like this. The dashing swordsman demonstrated a complex series of movements, his blade flowing like water through attack and defense patterns that seemed impossible to follow. Now you try, Fandral instructed. Goku attempted to replicate the pattern, his movements clumsy and uncertain compared to Fandral's fluid grace. But as he practiced, something remarkable happened. His body began to understand, to adapt. By the 10th repetition, he was moving more smoothly. By the 20th, he could execute the pattern without thinking. Remarkable, Fandral murmured, watching with fascination. You learn faster than anyone I have ever taught. Your body seems to memorize movements after only a few attempts. Is that unusual? Goku asked, genuinely curious. Very, Fandral confirmed. Most warriors require months or years to ingrain complex techniques. You do it in hours. Whatever your heritage, it has blessed you with an extraordinary gift for combat. Hogan's lessons were different, focused on patience, precision, and the grim necessity of lethal force. The taciturn warrior rarely spoke except to correct technique, but his silence carried its own lessons. Goku learned to read opponents through tiny tells, to wait for the perfect moment rather than rushing in. Volstagg, on the other hand, taught him the importance of adaptability and creativity in combat. A true warrior uses everything at his disposal, the large warrior bellowed, demonstrating how even a dropped weapon or environmental hazard could become an advantage. Your enemies will not always be honorable, and the battlefield will not always be fair. Learn to thrive in chaos, young prince. But it was his lessons with Loki that Goku found most challenging, because they involved no physical combat at all. Again, Loki said patiently as Goku's latest illusion flickered and dissolved. They stood in one of the palace's magic training rooms, circles of power carved into the floor beneath their feet. You are trying to force the magic. That is Thor's approach, and it does not work for more subtle arts. You must coax it, guide it. Feel the energy and convince it to take the shape you desire. But how? Goku asked with frustration. His tail lashed behind him, betraying his irritation. When I fight, I can feel my power clearly. It flows naturally. But magic is different. It is like trying to grab smoke. Because combat comes naturally to your heritage, Loki explained. Magic does not. That does not mean you are incapable of learning it, merely that it requires more effort. Now try again. This time, do not think about what you want the illusion to be. Simply feel it. Imagine how it should feel to be that thing, and let the magic follow your emotion rather than your will. Goku closed his eyes and tried a different approach. Instead of trying to create an illusion of a bird through sheer force of will, he thought about what it felt like to fly during his great ape transformation, the freedom, the exhilaration, the wind rushing past. He held that feeling and let it flow into the magic. When he opened his eyes, a shimmering golden bird hovered before him, more solid and real than any of his previous attempts. It was still clearly magical, translucent and glowing, but it held its form without constant concentration. Better, Loki said with genuine pleasure. Much better. You see? Magic is not about power. You have more than enough of that. It is about understanding, about connection. Your warrior's instinct serves you well in battle, but for magic, you must learn to think like a scholar as well. Is that why you study so much? Goku asked, maintaining the illusion with careful focus. To understand the magic better? Partially, Loki admitted. But also because knowledge is power in its own right. Thor can smash through any door with Mjolnir, but I can convince people to open the door willingly, or make them forget there was ever a door at all. Different approaches, both valuable. The bird dissolved as Goku's concentration wavered, but he felt pleased with the progress. Thank you for teaching me, brother. I know magic is not as exciting as combat training. On the contrary, Loki said with a slight smile. Teaching you is quite rewarding. You actually listen and apply what you learn, unlike some students I could name. He did not say Thor's name, but they both knew who he meant. As the seasons cycled through their eternal patterns in Asgard, Goku became increasingly integrated into the court and its politics. Odin began including him in council meetings, allowing him to observe how the Allfather governed the 9 realms. These sessions were eye-opening for Goku, revealing that ruling was about far more than strength or combat prowess. The people of Alfheim request additional aid for their harvest, one advisor reported. The blight that affected their western provinces has spread despite our previous assistance, and Svartalfheim reports increased dark elf activity near their borders with Midgard, another added. They ask for patrols. Odin listened to each report with careful attention, occasionally asking questions, always considering multiple angles before making decisions. Goku watched in fascination, beginning to understand the weight his father carried, responsible not just for Asgard, but for the delicate balance of power across all 9 realms. What would you do, Goku? Odin asked suddenly during one such meeting, surprising his youngest son. If you were king, how would you address Alfheim's request? All eyes turned to Goku, and he felt heat rise to his face. This was a test, he knew, but also a genuine question. His answer would be evaluated not just by his father but by the entire council. I would send aid, Goku said slowly, thinking through his reasoning. But not just supplies. I would also send scholars to study the blight, to understand why it spreads despite our help. Treating symptoms without understanding the cause will only require more aid later. Odin nodded approvingly. Well reasoned. And what of the dark elf situation? That is more complicated, Goku admitted. Increased patrols might deter them, but might also escalate tensions. I would ask Heimdall to watch more carefully, to determine if this is random activity or organized aggression. Our response should match the actual threat, not just the perceived one. Spoken like someone who understands that war should be a last resort, not a first response, one of the older counselors said with approval. The boy has wisdom beyond his years. Thor, who attended these meetings when he could be bothered to sit still long enough, looked proud of his younger brother. Loki's expression was harder to read, but there might have been satisfaction in his eyes. As the meeting concluded, Odin asked his 3 sons to remain behind. When the council chamber emptied, leaving only family, the All-Father's demeanor shifted from formal king to concerned father. You are all growing into your roles well, he said. Thor, you have become a formidable warrior and leader. Loki, Your strategic mind and magical prowess bring valuable perspectives to our governance. And Goku, your ability to balance warrior's instinct with thoughtful consideration shows promise. Thank you, Father, they chorused, though each with their own inflection. Thor proud, Loki measured, Goku earnest. But you must understand, Odin continued, his single eye grave, that the responsibilities you carry will only grow heavier. Thor, as my eldest, you will likely inherit the throne one day. You must prepare for that burden. Loki, as second son, you must be ready to advise and support your brother, to serve as his conscience and wisdom when his passion runs hot. And Goku, he paused, looking at his youngest with an expression that mixed pride and concern. You, my son, have a different path ahead. You are a bridge between Asgard and whatever lies beyond. Your dual heritage is not a weakness but a strength. You can move between worlds in ways your brothers cannot. This is a gift, but also a responsibility. I understand, Father, Goku said, though he was not entirely sure he did. The weight of expectations sat heavily on his young shoulders, made heavier by the knowledge that part of his destiny remained unknown. That night, unable to sleep, Goku made his way to the palace observatory where Heimdall sometimes came when not at his post. The all-seeing gatekeeper stood at one of the great windows, his golden eyes fixed on the stars beyond. Prince Goku, Heimdall greeted without turning around. You have questions. How did you know I was coming? Goku asked, then felt foolish. Right. All-seeing. Of course you knew. A slight smile touched Heimdall's usually stern face. What troubles you, young prince? Goku joined him at the window, staring out at the star-filled sky. Father says I am a bridge between worlds. But how can I be a bridge to a place I have never been, to people I do not know? How can I represent something I do not understand? You understand more than you think, Heimdall said quietly. You know what it is to be different, to struggle with identity, to question where you belong. These are universal experiences, Goku. They transcend the boundaries between realms. Your ability to empathize with others who feel displaced or confused. That is what makes you a bridge. Have you found them? Goku asked suddenly. My people, I mean. Do you know where I came from? Heimdall was silent for a long moment. I have found traces. A warrior race from a distant star system, known for their incredible battle prowess and their ability to transform under certain conditions. They call themselves Saiyans, and their home planet was called Vegeta. Was? Goku picked up on the past tense immediately. It no longer exists? I cannot say for certain, Heimdall admitted. My sight struggles to pierce such distances, and the cosmic barriers between realms grow thick beyond the nine. But I see no world where your pod originated, only ruins and silence. Goku felt something twist in his chest, grief for a home he had never known, for people he could not remember. So I might be alone? The last of my kind? Perhaps, Heimdall said. Or perhaps there are others scattered across the stars, refugees like yourself. The universe is vast, Goku, and full of possibilities both terrible and wonderful. Do not assume the worst without proof. But if my people are gone, Goku said slowly, then there is no home to return to. No bridge to build. I am simply here, and that is enough, Heimdall said firmly. Asgard is your home, Goku. Not because you have nowhere else to go, but because you chose it, and it chose you. Some of the strongest bonds are those formed by choice rather than blood. Goku nodded slowly, letting the words sink in. He looked up at the stars, seeing them not as accusatory reminders of his alien origin, but as a vast tapestry of possibilities. Somewhere out there, perhaps, were others like him. But here, now, in Asgard's golden halls, he had family, purpose, and belonging. Thank you, Heimdall, Goku said softly. Your words bring clarity. Then my sight serves a purpose beyond mere watching, the gatekeeper replied. Now go, young prince. Rest. Tomorrow brings new challenges, and you will need your strength. As Goku made his way back to his chambers, he felt lighter somehow, as if a weight he had not realized he was carrying had been lifted. The questions about his origin remained, but they no longer felt like accusations. They were simply part of who he was, threads in the larger tapestry of his identity. He passed through the quiet halls, noting the guards who nodded respectfully, the servants who smiled at him with genuine warmth. These were his people, regardless of his blood. This was his home, regardless of his birth. In his room, Goku found a surprise waiting, a wrapped package on his bed with a note in Frigga's elegant script, "For my youngest son, who grows stronger every day. May this remind you that strength comes in many forms." Inside was a book, not a grimoire of spells or a manual of combat techniques, but a collection of stories from across the 9 realms, tales of heroes and villains, of ordinary people doing extraordinary things, of choices made and consequences faced. A bookmark rested at a particular story, and Goku opened to that page. It was the tale of a warrior who had lost his home and wandered the realms seeking purpose. He fought in many battles, learned from many teachers, but found no peace. Until one day, he realized that home was not a place he needed to find. It was something he could create, anywhere he chose to plant his roots and fight to protect. Goku smiled, understanding his mother's message. She had always been the wisest of them all, knowing when to speak and when to let stories do the teaching. He climbed into bed, the book resting on his chest, and for the first time in weeks, sleep came easily. His dreams were peaceful, filled not with questions about distant stars, but with memories of training with Thor, studying with Loki, laughing with the Warriors 3, and sitting in comfortable silence with his father as Odin worked on affairs of state. These were his treasures. These were his truths. Whatever else he might be, wherever else he might have come from, he was first and always Goku Odinson, 3rd Prince of Asgard, and that was more than enough. The next morning dawned bright and clear, perfect weather for the festival that Asgard had been preparing for, a celebration of the autumn harvest and the warriors who protected the realm. Thor was nearly vibrating with excitement at breakfast, eager for the tournaments and competitions that would fill the day. "There will be archery, wrestling, and mounted combat," Thor announced enthusiastically. "Father, you must let Goku and me compete. We have been training for this." "You may compete in the youth divisions," Odin said with amusement. "Though I suspect you will both acquit yourselves well." "What about you, Loki?" Goku asked his other brother, who was carefully spreading jam on his bread. "Will you compete?" "In the magical demonstrations, perhaps," Loki replied. "I leave the sweaty physical competitions to you warriors. I prefer contests that require intellect." "You just know Thor would beat you at wrestling," Goku teased, his tail swishing playfully. "I know that rolling around in dirt holds no appeal," Loki countered with dignity. "But do enjoy your bruises, brother. I am sure they will be quite colorful." The festival was everything Thor had promised and more. The palace grounds transformed into a carnival of competition and celebration, with merchants selling treats, musicians playing joyful songs, and warriors from across Asgard gathering to test their skills. Goku competed in several events, his Saiyan strength and Asgardian training serving him well. He placed second in the wrestling competition, losing only to a warrior twice his age. His archery was less impressive, adequate but unremarkable, though he excelled at any contest requiring pure physical power. But it was the mounted combat that truly captured his attention. Watching skilled riders maneuver their steeds while wielding weapons with precision, Goku felt something stir in his chest, a desire not just to participate, but to master this art. He approached the stables after his events concluded, drawn by curiosity. The stable master, an older Asgardian named Ager, looked up in surprise when a prince entered his domain. "Prince Goku, what brings you to the stables?" "I want to learn to ride," Goku said simply. "The mounted warriors today were magnificent, and I wish to learn their art." Ager's weathered face creased in a smile. "A noble pursuit, young prince. Come, let me introduce you to some of our finest steeds." The horses of Asgard were not like mortal beasts. They were larger, more intelligent, and possessed a nobility that seemed almost supernatural. Ager showed Goku several impressive mounts, each with their own personality and quirks. But it was the horse at the end of the row that captured Goku's attention, a golden stallion with eyes that seemed to burn with inner fire. The creature was magnificent, but also wild-looking, with several warning signs posted on his stall. "That is Sunfire," Ager said with a mixture of pride and wariness. "The finest horse in all of Asgard, but also the most temperamental. He has thrown every rider who has attempted to mount him, including several of our best cavaliers. I would not recommend." But Goku was already approaching the stall, drawn by something he could not explain. The horse watched him with intelligent eyes, nostrils flaring as he caught the young prince's scent. For a moment either moved. Then Goku extended his hand slowly, palm up, in a gesture of peace. "Hello, Sunfire," he said quietly. "I am Goku. I think you and I might understand each other." The horse snorted, a sound that could have been dismissal or curiosity. But he did not pull away when Goku's hand touched his muzzle. Instead, he leaned into the touch, as if evaluating this strange young warrior with a tail. "Remarkable," Aga breathed. "He never lets anyone touch him like that." "He is lonely," Goku said with certainty, somehow understanding the horse's nature intuitively. "He is strong and proud, but everyone fears him. They see only his power and wildness, not his heart." "And you?" Sunfire seemed to ask with his fiery gaze. "I see a kindred spirit," Goku replied, speaking as much to himself as to the horse. "I see someone who does not quite fit where others think he should, but who is trying to find his place. I see someone worth knowing." From that day forward, Goku spent every free moment at the stables, working with Sunfire. The horse remained difficult and temperamental, but he allowed Goku to approach him, to groom him, and eventually, to ride him. Their partnership was unlike anything Agar had ever witnessed, a bond formed not through dominance but through mutual understanding and respect. "You have a gift with him," the stable master told Goku one afternoon, watching as the young prince guided Sunfire through complex maneuvers with only the lightest touch on the reins. "He responds to you as he has responded to no other." "We understand each other," Goku said simply, patting the horse's golden neck. "Both of us know what it is to be powerful but expected to be controlled, to be different but expected to fit in. He knows I will never try to break him, only work with him. And I know he will never let me fall, even when the riding becomes dangerous." As autumn deepened into winter, Goku's reputation throughout Asgard grew. No longer was he seen as merely the unusual youngest prince with a tail. He was becoming known as a warrior in his own right, skilled, dedicated, and possessed of a good heart that earned respect beyond his royal status. But with growing reputation came growing expectations, and Goku felt the weight of his father's words about being a bridge between worlds pressing down more heavily. His training intensified, his studies expanded, and his responsibilities increased. Through it all, his brothers remained constants, Thor with his boisterous encouragement, always pushing Goku to be bolder and stronger, Loki with his quiet support, teaching patience and strategy when Thor's enthusiasm became overwhelming. The three princes of Asgard, so different in nature and origin, yet bound together by something deeper than blood. Family, forged in the golden halls of the realm eternal, strengthened by shared experiences and genuine love. And in the heart of the youngest, a growing certainty that whatever questions remained about his origins, he had already found what mattered most: a place to belong, a family to cherish, and a purpose to pursue. Goku Odinson, third prince of Asgard, born among distant stars but raised in the light of the realm eternal. His story was just beginning, and already it promised to be legendary. 5 more years had passed since Goku first mounted Sunfire, and the young Saiyan prince had grown into a formidable warrior. At 18 summers by mortal reckoning, he stood tall and proud, his body honed by years of relentless training into a weapon of precision and power. His black hair remained as wild as ever, defying all attempts at grooming, and his tail had become as natural a part of his silhouette as his confident stride. The morning sun cast long shadows across Asgard's training grounds as Goku practiced his forms, moving through combat sequences with fluid grace. Each movement was precise, economical, the result of countless hours spent perfecting his technique under the watchful eyes of Asgard's greatest warriors. Sweat gleamed on his bare torso, muscles rippling beneath bronze skin as he transitioned from one stance to another. "Your form has improved considerably," came Sif's voice from the entrance to the training grounds. The warrior woman approached with her characteristic confident stride, fully armored despite the early hour. "Though you still drop your left shoulder when you transition from high guard to low." Goku paused, analyzing his last movement, then nodded in acknowledgement. "You are right. Old habit, I leave it open when I prepare to strike with my tail. I need to break that pattern before someone exploits it." "That is why we train," Sif said approvingly. She drew her sword, the blade singing as it left its sheath. "Now, less talking and more fighting. Thor mentioned that you 3 are departing on your first real mission today." I want to ensure you are ready. Thor talks too much, Goku said with a grin, falling into a ready stance. Father has not yet given final approval for the mission. Odin will approve it, Sif replied, circling him like a predator. You have been training for years for exactly this type of task. The three princes, working together to defend one of the 9 realms. It is time to prove you are more than just promising students. She struck without warning, her blade flashing toward Goku's chest. He twisted aside, his own practiced sword materializing in his hand, a gift from Tyr that could be summoned with a thought, perfect for a warrior who sometimes fought with fists and feet rather than steel. Their blades met with a ringing clash, the impact sending sparks flying. They fought across the training grounds, their combat a dance of lethal beauty. Sif was experienced, her technique flawless, but Goku had grown strong. His Saiyan heritage gave him strength and speed that few Asgardians could match, while his training had refined that raw power into genuine skill. Better, Sif grunted as Goku's tail swept her legs, forcing her to leap back. You are learning to use all your advantages, not just your obvious ones. A wise warrior once told me that anything can be a weapon if you are creative enough, Goku replied, referencing one of Volstag's favorite lessons. He pressed his advantage, raining blows that forced Sif onto the defensive, but experience told in the end. Sif fainted high, Goku took the bait, and her blade swept low, stopping just short of his ribs. Dead, she announced, lowering her weapon. You have the strength to overpower most opponents, but against truly skilled warriors, you must be more patient. Do not let eagerness make you reckless. Goku bowed respectfully, accepting the lesson. Thank you, Lady Sif. I will remember that in the field. See that you do, she said, but her stern expression softened slightly. You have become a fine warrior, Goku. Your father will be proud when you return from this mission successful. Just be careful out there. The 9 realms are not training grounds, and real enemies will not pull their strikes. I know, Goku said quietly. I am ready. Sif studied him for a moment longer, then nodded. Yes, I believe you are. As she departed, Goku continued his training, pushing his body through increasingly demanding exercises. He had learned over the years that his Saiyan physiology responded remarkably to physical stress. The harder he pushed himself, the stronger he became. It was as if his body was constantly adapting, evolving, seeking new heights of power. But with that power came responsibility, and the memory of his childhood transformations still haunted him. He had mastered the Great Ape form years ago, learning to transform at will and maintain his consciousness within the beast. Yet he never forgot how it felt to lose control, to become a mindless engine of destruction. That fear kept him humble, kept him training, kept him striving to ensure he would never again be a danger to those he loved. Still at it, little brother? Thor's booming voice echoed across the training grounds. The god of thunder strode toward him, Mjolnir hanging from his belt, his golden hair catching the morning light like a crown. You will exhaust yourself before we even depart. Better to be tired and sharp than rested and dull, Goku replied, finally stopping his exercises. He grabbed a towel, wiping sweat from his face. Besides, I am excited. Our first real mission together. How could I sleep? Thor laughed, clapping him on the shoulder with enough force to stagger a normal man. That is the spirit. Loki thinks we are fools for being eager, but he lacks our warrior's heart. He would prefer to solve problems with words and tricks rather than honest combat. His tricks have saved us in training exercises more times than I can count, Goku pointed out diplomatically. Over the years, he had learned to navigate the complex relationship between his 2 older brothers, Thor's passionate straightforwardness and Loki's clever subtlety. Both approaches had value, though either brother seemed fully willing to admit it. True enough, Thor conceded. Which is why Father is sending all 3 of us. Our strengths complement each other. Your power, my experience, and Loki's cunning, together, we are unstoppable. Goku smiled at his brother's enthusiasm, though he felt a flutter of nervousness in his stomach. This would be his first true test, his first opportunity to prove himself worthy of the title he bore. Years of training would finally be put to practical use, and the thought both thrilled and terrified him. They walked together toward the palace, where Odin had summoned them for a final briefing. The throne room was less formal today, only family present, along with Heimdall and a few trusted advisors. Loki was already there, looking immaculate in his formal leathers, his expression carefully neutral. "My sons," Odin greeted them, his single eye warm despite the gravity of the situation. "Today, you take your first steps as protectors of the 9 realms. The people of Vanaheim have reported disturbances along their eastern border, organized raids by beings they describe as demons from the void. Their warriors have held the line, but they request assistance to drive the invaders back and secure their realm." He gestured, and an illusion appeared in the air, a map of Vanaheim, with several areas marked in red. "These are the sites of attack. The pattern suggests coordination and intelligence, not random raids. You will travel to Vanaheim, assess the situation, and assist their warriors in ending this threat. Heimdall will maintain watch and can bring you home instantly if the situation becomes too dangerous." "We will not fail you, father," Thor said confidently. "I know you will not," Odin replied. "But remember, you go as representatives of Asgard. Your actions reflect not just on yourselves, but on our entire realm. Fight with honor, show mercy when appropriate, and remember that true strength is knowing when not to strike as much as knowing how." His gaze lingered on Goku. "My youngest, this will be your first true battle. The training grounds cannot fully prepare you for real combat, where the stakes are life and death. Trust your training, trust your brothers, and trust yourself. You are ready for this." Goku bowed deeply. "I will make you proud, father." Frigga approached then, and Goku saw the concern in her eyes despite her composed expression. She had been a constant source of comfort and wisdom throughout his life, teaching him that strength was more than physical power. Now, she placed her hands on each of her son's shoulders in turn. "Come back safely," she said simply. "All 3 of you. Victory means nothing if I lose any of my children in achieving it. We will return, mother," Loki promised, and for once, there was no clever deflection in his voice, only genuine sincerity. "You have my word." Within the hour, they stood in the Bifrost Observatory, fully armed and armored. Goku wore armor that was a blend of Asgardian and practical design, lightweight but durable, allowing for the fluid movement his fighting style required. His sword hung at his side, though he was equally comfortable fighting unarmed. His tail was wrapped securely around his waist, hidden beneath his cloak, a tactical decision to avoid giving opponents an obvious target. Thor looked every inch the god of thunder, Mjolnir in hand, red cape billowing despite the lack of wind. Loki was more understated but no less impressive, his armor designed for mobility rather than display, daggers concealed throughout his person, magic crackling at his fingertips. "The Vanir expect your arrival," Heimdall said, his golden eyes already fixed on distant Vanaheim. "King Freyr himself will meet you at the Bifrost landing site. Remember, you represent not just yourselves, but all of Asgard. Act accordingly." "We understand," Thor said, hefting Mjolnir eagerly. "Let us be off. Adventure awaits." The Bifrost roared to life, its rainbow energies enveloping them. Goku felt the familiar sensation of reality bending, of traveling impossible distances in the span of a heartbeat. Colors swirled around them, beautiful and disorienting, until suddenly they stood on solid ground once more. Vanaheim was different from Asgard, wilder, more organic. Where Asgard's architecture spoke of order and divine craftsmanship, Vanaheim seemed to grow naturally from the earth itself. Trees the size of mountains reached toward the sky, and crystalline structures jutted from the ground like frozen music. It was breathtakingly beautiful, and Goku found himself staring in wonder. "Welcome, princes of Asgard," came a resonant voice. King Freyr approached, flanked by several Vanir warriors. He was tall and regal, with features that seemed somehow more ethereal than even the Asgardians. "Your arrival is most welcome. The situation has grown dire since we sent our request for aid." Thor stepped forward, clasping forearms with Freyr in the warrior's greeting. "We are honored to assist our allies. Tell us what you face, and we will end this threat." As they walked toward Freyr's palace, the Vanir king explained the situation. "The attackers come in the night, emerging from portals of darkness. They strike quickly, taking supplies and captives before vanishing. Our warriors are skilled, but these creatures fight without fear or mercy, and their numbers seem to grow with each attack." "Portals?" Loki's interest was immediately piqued. "That suggests magical capability. Have you managed to capture any of these creatures for study?" "One," Freyr confirmed. but it died before we could interrogate it. However, our scholars examined the body. These are not natural beings. They are constructs of some kind, animated by dark magic. Someone is creating them and sending them to harass our realm. Then we find whoever is creating them and stop them at the source, Goku said, speaking up for the first time. All eyes turned to him, and he felt a moment of self-consciousness before pushing it aside. Treating symptoms without addressing the disease only delays the inevitable. Frere smiled approvingly. Wise words from one so young. Yes, that is precisely what we need, to find the source of this invasion and end it. But that is easier said than done. The creatures leave no trail when they retreat through their portals. Then we set a trap, Loki suggested. Let them attack, but this time, we will be ready. I can trace magical signatures. If I am present when they open their portal, I can track it back to its origin point. A sound plan, Thor agreed. We position ourselves at the most likely target, wait for the attack, and follow them home. Then we show these demons what happens when they threaten the 9 realms. Frere considered this, then nodded. Very well. Our scouts report that the Eastern Granary is likely their next target. It holds supplies they have tried to steal before. I will position my warriors to contain the attackers while you trace their portal. But be warned, these creatures are dangerous. They feel no pain and fight until destroyed utterly. They spent the rest of the day preparing. Frere's warriors showed them the Eastern Granary, a massive structure built into the trunk of one of Vanaheim's great trees. It was both beautiful and practical, storing enough grain to feed thousands through the winter. Goku could see why it would be a tempting target for raiders. As night fell, they took their positions. Thor stood prominently visible, a clear target to draw the attackers in. Loki concealed himself with illusions, ready to trace the portal magic, and Goku positioned himself in the shadows, waiting to strike when the moment was right. The waiting was the hardest part. Goku felt his heart hammering in his chest, adrenaline singing through his veins. This was different from training. Out here, failure meant people would die. The responsibility was both terrifying and exhilarating. Steady, little brother, Loki's voice whispered in his mind, a spell allowing them to communicate silently. Control your breathing. Fear before battle is natural, but you cannot let it control you. I am not afraid, Goku thought back, then reconsidered. Or rather, I am afraid, but I will not let it stop me. Is that normal? That is the definition of courage, Loki replied. Now focus. I sensed something approaching. The air began to ripple near the granary's entrance. Reality tore like fabric, and through the gap emerged things. They were vaguely humanoid in shape but wrong in every detail. Their skin was shadow black and seemed to absorb light. Red eyes glowed in skulls that were elongated and distorted. Long claws clicked against stone as they moved with unsettling fluidity. Goku counted at least 20 of them, possibly more still emerging from the portal. His muscles tensed, ready to spring into action, but he held his position. The plan required patience. The creatures spread out, moving toward the granary with clear purpose. Several Vanir warriors appeared to confront them, and the battle was joined. The creatures fought with savage efficiency, their claws cutting through armor like paper. But the Vanir were skilled, working together to bring down the attackers one by one. Then Thor made his entrance, leaping from his vantage point with Mjolnir raised high. For Asgard and Vanaheim! He roared, bringing the hammer down on the nearest creature with devastating force. The impact created a shockwave that sent several attackers flying backward. That was Goku's cue. He burst from concealment, his sword singing as it left its sheath. His first strike took a creature's head clean off, the dark body dissolving into smoke. His second strike blocked claws aimed at a Vanir warrior's back, saving the man's life. The battle became a chaotic melee. Goku moved through it like a dancer, his training taking over. Block, strike, dodge, counter, each movement flowing into the next. His Saiyan strength allowed him to shatter the creatures with single blows, while his Asgardian training kept him from leaving himself open to counterattack. But there were so many of them, and more kept coming through the portal. For every creature they destroyed, 2 more seemed to take its place. Goku felt sweat running down his back, his muscles beginning to burn with exertion. Loki! Thor called out, crushing 3 creatures with a single swing of Mjolnir. Can you trace the portal? Working on it. Loki's voice was strained. He was maintaining multiple illusions while simultaneously analyzing the portal's magical structure. These enchantments are complex. I need more time. Time we may not have. Goku shouted, his blade cutting through another attacker. He could see the Vanir warriors beginning to tire, several already wounded. They needed to end this quickly. A creature lunged at him from his blind spot. Goku's instincts screamed a warning, and he twisted aside, but not quite fast enough. Claws raked across his side, tearing through armor and flesh. Pain blazed through him, hot and sharp. For a moment, everything seemed to slow down. Goku looked at the creature that had wounded him, saw its red eyes gleaming with triumph, saw more creatures moving to surround him, to finish what the first had started. Saw Thor fighting desperately to reach him but blocked by a wall of attackers, and something inside Goku snapped. It was not anger, exactly, at least not like Thor's battle rage. It was deeper than that, more primal. A fundamental refusal to fall, to fail, to let these things hurt anyone else. His power, always simmering beneath the surface, erupted like a volcano. Golden energy exploded outward from Goku's body, sending creatures flying in all directions. His muscles swelled, his power multiplying beyond anything he had ever achieved in training, and his hair, his wild black hair, began to shift, strands lightening, glowing, transforming into brilliant gold. The world seemed sharper, somehow clearer. Every movement of every creature registered in his awareness. Their attacks, which moments ago had seemed impossibly fast, now moved at a crawl. Goku could see every opening, every weakness, every opportunity. He moved without thinking, pure instinct guiding his actions. His fist struck a creature with such force that it did not simply die. It was obliterated, scattered to atoms by the sheer magnitude of the impact. His tail lashed out, catching another attacker and hurling it through three of its companions with enough force to destroy all four. By the Norns, he heard Thor breathe. What is happening to him? The creatures seemed to sense the change in him, their primitive intelligence recognizing a predator far above them in the hierarchy of violence. They turned to flee, scrambling back toward their portal. But Goku was faster. He appeared in front of the portal in a burst of speed that left golden afterimages, blocking their escape. Energy crackled around his hands, not magic like Loki's, but raw power given form. He thrust his palms forward, and a blast of golden light erupted from them, catching a dozen creatures in its path. The beam carved through the attackers like they were made of paper. It continued past them, slamming into the portal itself. Reality shrieked as the unstable energies collided, and the portal began to collapse. No! Loki shouted. I almost had the trace, but it was too late. The portal imploded with a sound like reality tearing, taking the remaining creatures with it. Silence fell over the battlefield, broken only by the ragged breathing of the survivors and the crackle of golden energy still surrounding Goku. The young Saiyan stood there, staring at his hands in shock. Golden aura flickered around him like flames, and he could feel the power still coursing through his veins, more power than he had ever imagined possible. His hair, he realized, had changed color entirely, now a bright gold that seemed to glow with its own inner light. Goku? Thor approached carefully, Mjolnir held ready but not threatening. Brother, are you, yourself? Goku looked at him, and Thor saw recognition in those eyes, still his brother's eyes, still filled with the same essential kindness, but changed somehow. Sharper. More intense. I am myself, Goku said, and his voice was his own, though it carried an undertone of power that had not been there before. I do not know what happened. The creature wounded me, and then you transformed, Loki finished, appearing at Thor's side. His expression was a mixture of fascination and concern. Your hair changed color, your power increased exponentially. I felt it from across the battlefield, like a star igniting in human form. Super Saiyan, Goku whispered, the words coming from somewhere deep in his genetic memory. The legendary transformation of my people. The warrior of legend who appears once every 1,000 years. I achieved it? The golden aura flickered and faded, and with it went the transformation. Goku's hair returned to black, his power dropping to its normal levels. Exhaustion hit him like a physical blow, and he would have fallen if Thor had not caught him. Easy, little brother, Thor said gently. That took a lot out of you. You need rest. But the portal, Goku protested weakly. I destroyed it before Loki could trace it. I ruined the plan. I'm sorry, I did not mean. You saved lives, Freyr interrupted, approaching with several of his warriors. The Vanir king looked shaken but grateful. Without your intervention, many more of my people would have fallen. The portal can be traced another way. What you did here tonight, that was nothing short of miraculous. Goku wanted to argue, but exhaustion was pulling him under. The last thing he remembered before consciousness faded was Thor lifting him easily, and Loki's voice saying something about getting him to safety. He awoke in an unfamiliar room, sunlight streaming through windows carved from living wood. For a moment, disorientation reigned. Where was he? What had happened? Then memory returned in a rush. The battle, the transformation, the power that had both terrified and thrilled him. You are awake, came Loki's voice. His brother sat in a chair beside the bed, a book open on his lap but clearly not being read. Good. You have been unconscious for nearly a day. Thor was beside himself with worry. Goku sat up carefully, testing his body. Everything ached, but in a good way, the pleasant soreness that followed intense training. The wound on his side had been healed, leaving only a faint scar. What happened to me? Goku asked quietly. That transformation. I felt like I could destroy mountains with a thought. The power was incredible, but also terrifying. What if I had lost control? But you did not, Loki pointed out. Even in that transformed state, you remained yourself. You protected people, destroyed only the enemy, and showed restraint when you could have simply obliterated everything in sight. That speaks of control, not its absence. It felt natural somehow, Goku admitted. Like I was remembering something I had always known but forgotten. My body knew what to do, even though my mind did not understand. Genetic memory, perhaps, Loki mused. If this transformation is part of your racial heritage, it would make sense that knowledge of it is encoded in your very cells. When the trigger conditions were met, extreme stress, mortal danger, perhaps the right emotional state, your body simply remembered. Goku looked at his hands, flexing his fingers. They looked normal now, but he could remember how they had glowed with golden energy. Can I do it again? Transform at will? An excellent question, Loki said. And one we should probably answer under controlled conditions rather than in the middle of another battle. Father will want to know about this development. It changes things. Changes them how? Loki's expression grew serious. Goku, that transformation made you stronger than Thor. Possibly stronger than anyone in Asgard save Father himself. That kind of power cannot be ignored. You will need to master it, to understand its limits and costs. Because if you cannot control it, I will become a danger, Goku finished. Like the Great Ape transformation, but worse because I will be fully aware while potentially causing destruction. Exactly. Loki closed his book and leaned forward. I am not saying this to frighten you, brother. But you need to understand the responsibility that comes with this power. When you transformed, I felt several other beings across the 9 realms take notice. Ancient powers that normally ignore our affairs. You announced yourself to the cosmos as someone significant. That attention will bring both opportunities and dangers. Goku absorbed this soberly. He had wanted to prove himself, to show he was worthy of his family's faith. Now he had done so, but in a way that raised as many questions as it answered. Where is Thor? He asked, needing to change the subject before his thoughts spiraled too deeply. Coordinating with Freyr's warriors, Loki replied. We may have lost the portal trace, but the creatures left behind some residue that I can analyze. We are not giving up on finding their source, just taking a different approach. Then I should help. You should rest, Loki interrupted firmly. You pushed yourself to the breaking point and beyond. Even your remarkable healing abilities need time to fully restore you. Besides, he added with a slight smile, Thor is actually competent at military coordination when you are not around to watch him show off. Let him handle this part. Goku wanted to argue but recognized the wisdom in Loki's words. His body felt drained in a way that went beyond simple physical exhaustion, as if the transformation had burned through reserves he had not even known he possessed. Over the next few days, as his strength returned, Goku helped analyze the aftermath of the battle. The creatures, they discovered, were indeed constructs, artificial beings created through dark magic and given purpose by some malevolent intelligence. The residue Loki collected pointed toward the Dark Elf realms, specifically to regions where ancient and forbidden magics were still practiced. We should venture into Svartalfheim, Thor declared during one of their strategy sessions. Find whoever is creating these abominations and end their schemes. That would be unwise, Freyr cautioned. The Dark Elves are nominally our allies, if distant ones. We cannot simply invade their realm without cause or permission. We must tread carefully here, lest we start a war between realms. Then we go as investigators, not conquerors, Loki suggested. We request an audience with the Dark Elf leadership, explain the situation, and ask their assistance in rooting out the rogue magic user. If they refuse, then we have cause to act more directly. It was decided. They would journey to Svartalfheim, the realm of the Dark Elves, a place of shadows and ancient power, and seek the source of the attacks. But first, they would return to Asgard to report their findings and seek Odin's counsel. The Bifrost's journey home felt different to Goku this time. He had left as an untested youth, eager to prove himself but uncertain of his abilities. He returned as a warrior who had faced real danger and unlocked a transformation that defied easy explanation. Odin was waiting for them in the throne room, Frigga at his side. Both parents looked relieved to see their sons return safely, though Odin's single eye studied Goku with particular intensity. I know what happened, the Allfather said without preamble. Heimdall witnessed your transformation. Come, my son. We must speak of what you have become. In Odin's private study, away from the ears of the court, the Allfather listened as Goku described the transformation in detail. How it felt, what triggered it, how the power seemed both foreign and intimately familiar. Super Saiyan, Odin repeated thoughtfully when Goku finished. A warrior of legend. I have heard whispers of such beings in my travels, though I never witnessed one myself. Your people's ultimate transformation, achievable only by those who possess both the power and the pure heart necessary to channel such strength. But what does it mean? Goku asked. For me, for Asgard? Odin was silent for a long moment, his expression grave. It means, my son, that you have reached a threshold. You are no longer simply a promising young warrior. You are now a force that could reshape battles, perhaps even realms, if fully unleashed. That makes you both an incredible asset and a potential target. He placed a hand on Goku's shoulder. I am proud of you, Goku. You used your power to protect others, not to glorify yourself. That shows the character we have tried to instill in you. But you must be cautious now. There are those who would seek to use you, to turn your strength to their own purposes. And there are those who will fear you, who will see only a threat rather than a protector. I will not let this power change who I am, Goku said firmly. I am still myself, still your son, still Asgardian, regardless of what I can become. Good, Odin said, and his expression softened into a smile. Then you understand what many never learn, that true strength is not measured in power alone, but in how that power is wielded. Continue as you have begun, my son, and you will become not just a great warrior, but a great man. That evening, the family gathered privately in Frigga's garden, a rare moment of peace where they could simply be together without the weight of titles and responsibilities. Thor regaled them with exaggerated accounts of the battle, making Goku's transformation sound even more dramatic than it had been. His hair blazed like the sun itself, Thor declared, gesturing wildly. And the energy surrounding him, I have never seen anything like it. For a moment, I thought he might actually be more powerful than me. For a moment? Loki interjected dryly. Brother, let us be honest, in that state, Goku was definitely more powerful than you. I measured the energy output. It was extraordinary. Thor looked like he wanted to argue but could not quite bring himself to lie. Well, he said finally, it was still an impressive display. Though I could probably match it if I truly cut loose. Of course you could, Frigga said soothingly, though her eyes sparkled with amusement. You are all impressive in your own ways. That is why you work so well together. Each of you brings something unique to complement the others. Goku listened to his family's banter, feeling a deep sense of contentment despite the questions that still plagued him. Yes, he had unlocked a transformation that changed everything. Yes, there were dangers ahead, missions to complete, enemies to face. But here, in this moment, surrounded by people who loved him unconditionally, he felt at peace. "What are you thinking about, little brother?" Loki asked quietly, having noticed Goku's distant expression. "I am thinking that I am fortunate," Goku replied honestly. "Whatever power I might possess, whatever challenges lie ahead, I face them with family at my side. That makes me stronger than any transformation ever could." Thor raised his cup, filled with juice, as per their mother's rules, in a toast. "To family. And to Goku's new power. May we use it to bring justice to those who threaten the 9 realms." They clinked their cups together, and Goku felt his heart swell with emotion. He had come so far from the frightened infant found in a crashed pod. He had been given a home, a family, a purpose, and now, with this Super Saiyan transformation at his command, he had the power to truly make a difference. But even as he celebrated with his family, part of his mind was already turning toward the next challenge. Svartalfheim awaited them, the realm of darkness and shadow, where ancient secrets lurked and dangerous powers dwelt. Whoever was creating the demon constructs operated from there, and it would fall to the 3 princes to root them out. The thought should have frightened him. Instead, Goku felt only determination. He was ready. More than ready. He had trained for years, had unlocked power beyond his wildest dreams, and had brothers who would stand with him against any threat. Let the Dark Elves come. Let the Demon Makers reveal themselves. Goku Odinson, 3rd Prince of Asgard and Super Saiyan warrior, would face them all, and he would win. Later that night, unable to sleep, Goku stood on his balcony overlooking Asgard's golden city. The realm eternal stretched before him, beautiful beyond words, and he felt a fierce surge of protectiveness. This was his home. These were his people. And he would die before he let any harm come to them. His hand clenched into a fist, and for just a moment, golden energy flickered around it, an echo of his transformation, responding to his determination. He studied the glow with a mixture of awe and trepidation. Such power, and it was his to command. The responsibility was staggering. "Cannot sleep either?" Thor's voice came from behind him. His oldest brother joined him at the railing, looking out over the city. "Too much excitement for one day, I suppose?" "Something like that," Goku agreed. "Thor, when I transformed, did I seem different? Not just more powerful, but different as a person?" Thor considered this carefully. "You seemed more intense, perhaps. More focused. But you were still you, Goku. You still fought to protect others, still showed restraint when you could have simply destroyed everything. The transformation amplified your power, not your cruelty. That is important. I was afraid I might become like the great ape," Goku admitted. "Mindless, destructive, dangerous to friend and foe alike. But you did not," Thor said firmly. "You controlled it, even though it was your first time. That shows strength of will, little brother. Not many could claim the same. Father was right to be proud of you." They stood in comfortable silence for a while, 2 brothers contemplating the challenges ahead. Finally Thor spoke again. "When we go to Svartalfheim, things may become dangerous. The Dark Elves are not like the Vanir. They do not welcome outsiders, and their politics are Byzantine even by Asgardian standards. We will need to be careful." "I know," Goku said. "But we will face it together, as we always have. The 3 of us, your strength, Loki's cunning, and my, whatever I have become. Together, we can handle anything." "Together," Thor agreed, clasping Goku's shoulder. "Now, get some rest. We have a long journey ahead of us, and I want you at full strength. Who knows, you might need to transform again, and I want to see if you can control it from the start this time." "That makes one of us," Goku muttered, but he was smiling as he said it. As Thor departed, Goku remained on the balcony a while longer, his thoughts turning inward. The Super Saiyan transformation had awakened something in him, not just power, but purpose. He had always known he was different, that his heritage set him apart. Now, that difference had manifested as strength that could change the balance of power across realms. The question was, what would he do with it? His father had taught him that true leadership meant using power wisely, showing restraint even when force was available. His mother had taught him compassion, the importance of seeing the person behind the enemy. Thor had taught him courage, to face challenges head-on without fear, and Loki had taught him that there were many paths to victory, not all of them requiring combat. These lessons had shaped him, made him who he was. The Super Saiyan transformation was just another tool, albeit an incredibly powerful one. It did not define him, his choices defined him, and Goku chose to be a protector. Not a conqueror, not a destroyer, but a shield for those who needed defending. That was his purpose, his calling, the reason he had been given this strength. He looked up at the stars, somewhere among which his birth people had once lived. Perhaps they were gone, scattered or destroyed by whatever cataclysm had sent him across the cosmos as an infant. Or perhaps they still existed, fighting their own battles in distant systems. Either way, Goku had found his place. Here in Asgard, with family who loved him and a purpose that gave his life meaning. The Super Saiyan transformation was his legacy from a people he had never known. But how he used it, that would be his legacy to the people who had raised him, and he would make them proud. With that resolution firm in his heart, Goku finally returned to his chambers and found sleep. His dreams were vivid, filled with golden light, epic battles, and the faces of those he loved. When he woke the next morning, he felt renewed, ready to face whatever challenges awaited. The warrior had awakened, and the 9 realms would never be quite the same.